This video is brought to you by Virtue Community, and today we're going to talk about puberty hormones. You might be wondering, what are all the hormones people talk about during puberty? And what do puberty hormones even do? Well, let's take a look. It actually all begins when your mum was pregnant with you. When a baby is developing inside the womb, all babies get an X chromosome from their mum. Then, if the baby gets another X chromosome from their dad, then they have two X chromosomes. This will signal the babies to develop ovaries and grow into a girl. If the baby gets a Y chromosome from their dad, they now have an X and a Y chromosome. So this will signal the developing baby to grow testes and to develop into a boy. The testes and ovaries are called the primary sex characteristics because they are the first signal of the sex or the gender of the developing baby. So then, what are secondary sex characteristics? If we get our primary sex characteristics when we're inside our mummy's tummy, when do we get our secondary sex characteristics? Well, secondary sex characteristics develop during puberty, and puberty actually begins in the brain. So the hypothalamus, which is located in the brain, right here, releases a hormone called the gonadotrophin releasing hormone, or GnRH for short. This hormone has been in your body since you were developed, and when you developed your ovaries and testes in the first instance, your body also developed a hormone, this particular hormone. So you've had it there all along inside you, but it's just been in really low levels. And then when puberty starts, when the brain just decides to kick off puberty, it starts to develop this hormone in much larger quantities, and it starts to release it much more frequently. So what happens is the GnRH hormone goes from the hypothalamus into a region just next door in the brain called the pituitary gland. And this hormone signals the pituitary gland that it's time to start developing into an adult and to start to develop this child so that they can mature and then be able to have children. So in response to this GnRH hormone being released, the pituitary gland then decides, okay, it's time for puberty. I'm going to now start to produce or release in higher quantities two more hormones. Wonder what they are called. Again, confusing names, but they are called LH and FSH. So LH stands for luteinizing hormone and FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. And these hormones travel through your bloodstream to your gonads or your testes and ovaries that you developed when you were inside your mother's womb and you were born with as a baby. So the pituitary gland has been signaled by the GnRH hormone from the hypothalamus. The pituitary gland then goes, okay, we're going to start producing these other two hormones in much higher quantities because we're going to start puberty. And so what happens is those two hormones travel from the brain in boys to their testes, in girls to their ovaries. And then, you've guessed it, they produce another two hormones. So the testes, if you're a boy, will start to produce testosterone in much higher quantities, and the ovaries, if you're a girl, will start to produce estrogen in much higher quantities. Now, the ovaries and the testes have been there since birth. The testosterone and estrogen hormones have also been there since birth, but they're just being released in much higher quantities during puberty so that they can develop the body and start to produce fertility and the ability to have children. And these two hormones are called the gonad hormones because they are controlled. How much you have in your body and how frequently they're released is controlled by the gonads, by the testes or the ovaries. So these gonad hormones, they're the ones that start to tell your body, okay, it's time for secondary sex characteristics. So they're called secondary, as in they're the second set of characteristics that make your body function and look like a man or a woman. So as a baby, you would have looked like a boy or a girl based on whether you had testes or ovaries. and whether you had a penis or a vagina. But that was sort of all we had to go by when you were a baby. Now that you're older and you're going to head into puberty, the secondary sex characteristics start to give us some more anatomy and some more hormones that make us look and feel more like a boy or a girl. So the secondary sex characteristics produce or help develop the reproductive organs in our bodies. So boys will start to produce sperm. In girls, they will start to develop breasts and start to get the onset of their period. So these two hormones will manage those two processes, and they'll also help us produce other characteristics we would more associate with a male anatomy, things like facial hair, pubic hair, armpit hair. So these are the things we call secondary sex characteristics because they align with our primary sex characteristics, but they don't happen until we start to mature into an adult. So just to recap, puberty actually is the process by which we develop the ability to have children, and it does this by producing several hormones in our body to start making our bodies grow and develop in specific ways that relate to having children. Starting with the GnRH hormone, which then causes us to release the LH and FSH hormone. That all happens in our brain. Those second two hormones travel down to the testes or the ovaries and then produce more hormones like testosterone and estrogen, which then help to manage our fertility and our sexual organ development through the rest of our lives. So just a little recap over how that happens. And that's just a very short overview from Virtue Community about the hormones that are released during puberty. If you have any questions or you'd like to know more, head to our website www.virtuecommunity.com.au.